The quantum drive of the U.S. Intrepid hummed with a low, almost sentient resonance as it slipped between the razor-thin barriers of spacetime. Captain Jackson Reeves studied the holographic star charts with an intensity that bordered on religious concentration. His crew, a carefully selected group of humanity's finest explorers and scientists, moved about the bridge with a choreographed precision that spoke of countless hours of training and mutual trust. Lieutenant Rachel Gonzalez, the ship's primary sensor analyst, broke the tense silence. Her fingers danced across multiple holographic interfaces, parsing through layers of cosmic background radiation and quantum noise. "Captain," she called out, her voice carrying a note of something between excitement and profound unease. "I'm detecting anomalous energy signatures that don't match any known stellar or planetary emission patterns." Reeves shifted, his muscular frame moving with the controlled grace of a predator. The bridge of the Intrepid was a marvel of human engineering, a perfect blend of technological sophistication and ergonomic design. Unlike the sterile, overly complicated interfaces of other spacefaring civilizations, human vessels maintained a delicate balance between computational power and human intuition. "Overlay the data," he commanded, his voice a low, controlled instrument. The ship's central holographic display transformed, quantum processed data materializing like ghostly tendrils of information. What emerged was a nightmare cartography of destruction. Star systems that should have been vibrant with the energy of civilizations were instead rendered as hollow shells, cosmic graveyards that told a story of systematic, merciless consumption. Dr. Marcus Alvarez, the ship's xenorchaeologist, leaned forward. His hands trembled slightly as he manipulated the holographic display, zooming into regions of space that seemed to whisper tales of horror. "These aren't random attacks," he muttered, more to himself than to the crew. "This is methodical, surgical. Something is harvesting entire civilizations." The data told a chilling story. Energy signatures suggested the complete conversion of planetary masses, not just destruction, but total molecular repurposing. Entire ecosystems, technological infrastructures, and presumably the civilizations that created them, reduced to raw material with a precision that defied conventional understanding of warfare or resource extraction. Lieutenant Gonzalez's voice cracked slightly. "The scale is incomprehensible. These signatures suggest the complete consumption of not just individual planets, but entire star systems. Multiple star systems." Captain Reeves understood something fundamental in that moment. This was more than a potential threat. This was an existential challenge to the very concept of life in the universe. Whoever, or whatever, was responsible for these cosmic atrocities represented a form of existence that saw intelligent life as nothing more than raw material to be processed and consumed. "Enhance Sector G742, Reeves commanded. The holographic display zoomed, revealing the remnants of what had once been a thriving star system. Orbital rings hum like shattered glass, planetary cores exposed and seemingly hollowed out. Debris fields contained fragments of what might have been cities, technological structures, perhaps even the last desperate attempts of a civilization to survive. Dr. Alvarez spoke again, his academic detachment fighting with a rising sense of horror. The technological sophistication required to do this, it's beyond anything in our current understanding. This isn't just destruction. This is systematic harvesting on a scale that challenges our entire concept of resource management and technological development. The bridge fell into a heavy silence. Each crew member understood the implications. Humanity had long wondered if they were alone in the universe. Now they had an answer that was more terrifying than simple emptiness. Captain Reeves broke the silence. Prepare a full data package. Maximum encryption. This goes directly to Earth Command, eyes only for the Xenological Threat Assessment Committee. He paused, his eyes reflecting the ghostly holographic images of destroyed civilizations. And prepare the long-range quantum communicator. We're going to need to verify these findings. Lieutenant Gonzalez's fingers flew across the interfaces. Transmission protocols initiated. Sir, quantum encryption at maximum levels. As the U.S. Intrepid continued its silent journey through the cosmic graveyard, something fundamental had changed. This was no longer a mission of exploration. This was the beginning of a confrontation that would define the future of not just humanity, but potentially all intelligent life in the universe. The hunting grounds had been discovered, and humanity was about to change the rules of the game. The Galactic Conclave's central chamber was a masterpiece of architectural hubris, a vast, crystalline sphere suspended in the neutral space between three inhabited star systems. Holographic displays flickered with centuries of diplomatic protocols, while representatives from over 200 spacefaring civilizations occupied their designated hover platforms. Captain Jackson Reeves stood at the center of this cosmic bureaucratic nightmare, his human delegation deliberately positioned to draw maximum attention. Behind him, a meticulously prepared holographic presentation hovered, each frame a testament to systematic galactic destruction. Ambassador William Hartley, the senior diplomatic representative, leaned close to Reeves. His voice was a carefully modulated whisper. "Remember, we're walking into a system designed to maintain the status quo. These beings have perfected the art of ignoring uncomfortable truths." The Xylaxian Grand Diplomat, a creature of intricate biomechanical complexity, watched Reeves with 6 independently moving eyes. Its body was a living tapestry of neural interfaces and diplomatic regalia, each tentacle adorned with communication crystals that pulsed with centuries of accumulated political manipulation. "Representatives of the Galactic Conclave," Reeves began, his voice cutting through the ambient translation algorithms, "we present evidence of a systematic threat that endangers every known spacefaring civilization." The first holographic image materialized, a star system reduced to atomic components. Planetary masses shattered, orbital infrastructures dissolved, the very fabric of civilization erased with surgical precision. A ripple of dismissive murmurs spread through the chamber. The Krellax representative, a crystalline being that communicated through harmonic resonances, was the first to vocalize the collective response. Another human dramatization, it hummed, its crystal structure vibrating with condescension. "Your species has been spacefaring for mere decades. What could you possibly understand about galactic dynamics?" Ambassador Hartley stepped forward, his diplomatic training a razor-sharp weapon. "What we understand is pattern recognition. These attacks follow a precise methodology. Whoever, or whatever, is responsible is consuming entire civilizations with mathematical precision." The holographic display shifted, showing comparative data. Star systems consumed. Technological infrastructures dismantled. Entire planetary populations converted into raw molecular resources. The Xylaxian Grand Diplomat raised a manipulative appendage. "Speculation," it declared, its translation matrix carrying a tone of patronizing dismissal. "Your evidence is circumstantial. The universe is vast. Entropy creates patterns that can be misinterpreted by inexperienced observers." Dr. Marcus Alvarez, standing behind Reeves, could no longer contain himself. "Misinterpreted," his academic calm shattered. "We have transmission logs, quantum encrypted data packages, visual records from multiple independent sources." The chamber descended into a cacophony of diplomatic dismissal. Representatives from older, more established civilizations saw humans as brash newcomers, a species that had barely mastered faster-than-light travel, now presuming to warn about a galactic threat. Captain Reeves understood the game being played. This wasn't about scientific evidence. This was about political power. The established civilizations had built their entire existence on a delicate balance of diplomatic compromise and calculated ignorance. "You're choosing blindness," Reeves stated, his voice cutting through the diplomatic noise. "Every civilization represented here has lost territories, has watched entire populations vanish. And you sit here, parsing diplomatic language while something is systematically consuming intelligent life." The Krellax representative's harmonic response translated to pure institutional arrogance. "Threats have always existed. Civilizations adapt. Negotiate. Survive. Ambassador Hartley's response was a masterpiece of diplomatic subtlety. Survival is not synonymous with surrender. As the debate raged, Captain Reeves knew they had already lost this battle. The Galactic Conclave was a monument to institutional inertia, a collection of civilizations so invested in their current power structures that they would ignore an existential threat rather than disrupt their comfortable existence. The presentation concluded. The holographic displays winked out. The dismissal was unanimous and complete. Humanity had been heard and comprehensively ignored. Outside the crystalline chamber, the void between stars continued its silent work. Something was hunting, and no one was listening. The Crocieri homeworld was a marvel of biological engineering, a planet where technology and organic life existed in perfect symbiosis. Crystalline spires rose from living foundations, cities that breathed and adapted, ecosystems interwoven with quantum computational networks. They were a civilization that had mastered the delicate art of sustainable technological evolution. And now they were dying. Lieutenant Rachel Gonzalez watched the transmission logs with a growing sense of horror that transcended professional detachment. The U.S. Intrepid's communication arrays were capturing the final moments of an entire civilization, a digital requiem broadcast across the cosmic void. The first images were almost beautiful in their terrifying precision. Biomechanical harvesters descended like a metallic plague, moving with a mathematical efficiency that suggested something beyond mere technological conquest. These were not conquerors. They were processors, converters, consumers. Enhanced audio, Captain Jackson Reeves commanded, his voice tight with restrained emotion. The bridge filled with a soundscape of terror. Crocieri communication was a complex harmony of biological resonance and quantum-encoded language. What emerged was a symphony of destruction, mathematical precision overlaid with the raw emotional frequency of a species facing total extinction. Dr. Marcus Alvarez leaned forward, his hands dancing across multiple holographic interfaces. "It's systematic," he muttered. "Not random destruction. Complete molecular reconfiguration." The transmission showed entire cities being broken down at the atomic level. Buildings dissolved into raw molecular components. Living beings converted into streams of genetic and technological data. The Vorax harvesting process was not destruction, it was processing. "They're not killing," Lieutenant Gonzalez said, her voice a whisper of scientific revelation. "They're converting. Entire populations, entire ecosystems, raw material for something." Captain Reeves understood the true horror. This was beyond warfare, beyond resource extraction. This was a form of existence that viewed intelligent life as nothing more than base components to be efficiently processed and repurposed. The final Crocieri transmission came from a central communication hub. A group of elder administrators, their bodies partially integrated with the city's quantum network, made a final report. Their voices were calm, a cultural trait that spoke to centuries of philosophical preparation for potential extinction. Observation log, final entry, the lead administrator intoned. Her body was more machine than organic at this point, a living interface with the city's core systems. Harvesting entities demonstrate capabilities beyond our comprehensive understanding. Molecular conversion rate at 87.3%. Quantum network integrity compromised. Biological population terminal. Dr. Alvarez's hands were shaking. They're documenting their own extinction with scientific precision. The transmission continued. The Crocieri did not beg. They did not plead. They observed. They recorded. They understood that their primary function in these final moments was to provide data, a final contribution to the collective knowledge of intelligent life. Molecular conversion complete. The administrator concluded. Crocieri civilization terminated. Data package prepared for potential retrieval. Then silence. Captain Reeves looked at his crew. No words were necessary. They had just witnessed something unprecedented. A civilization's final moments, captured with clinical detachment. Lieutenant Gonzalez broke the silence, We need to prepare a full report for Earth Command. This is beyond a military threat. This is a fundamental challenge to the concept of life itself. Dr. Alvarez was already processing the transmission data. The conversion methodology is fascinating. They're not just destroying. They're reformatting. Converting entire planetary ecosystems into some form of unified computational matrix. Captain Reeves understood something fundamental in that moment. The Orcs represented more than a military challenge. They were a different form of existence, a civilization that saw life not as something to be preserved, but as raw material to be efficiently processed. "Prepare quantum communication burst," he commanded. "Maximum encryption. This information does not leave this ship until we've fully analyzed every microsecond of this transmission." The U.S. Intrepid continued its silent journey through the cosmic graveyard. Somewhere in the vast darkness, something was hunting. Something was consuming. And humanity had just become aware of a threat that challenged everything they understood about life, civilization, and existence itself. The hunt had begun. The advanced research complex stretched across the lunar surface like a living organism of human ingenuity. Nestled beneath reinforced quantum adaptive domes, it was humanity's answer to an existential threat that most of the galaxy refused to acknowledge. Dr. Michael Harrison stood at the epicenter of human technological evolution. His lab was less a research facility and more a crucible of innovation. Walls lined with holographic interfaces that pulsed with real-time computational matrices, quantum processors that could simulate entire civilizational collapse scenarios in milliseconds. "We're not building weapons," Harrison muttered to his primary research team. "We're engineering a fundamental shift in technological paradigm." Lieutenant Rebecca Chung, the project's lead systems integration specialist, understood exactly what he meant. The Crocieri transmission logs had revealed something terrifying. The Orcs didn't just destroy. They converted, processed, reformatted entire ecosystems into some form of unified computational matrix. Human innovation had always been born of desperation. World wars, climate challenges, space exploration. Now, they faced their greatest evolutionary challenge. The quantum-entangled munition prototype hung in the central holographic display, a weapon that was more of a computational ecosystem than a traditional armament. Its core was a living algorithm, capable of adapting and learning faster than any known technological system. "Traditional defensive technologies are garbage," Harrison explained, his fingers dancing across multiple holographic interfaces. "We're not building something to stop an attack. We're building something that can predict, counter, and fundamentally disrupt an entire alien computational methodology." The nanoswarm technology represented the pinnacle of this approach. Microscopic computational units that could deconstruct molecular structures, learn from their environment, and reorganize themselves with impossible speed. Each nanounit was essentially a miniature artificial intelligence, capable of independent decision-making, while maintaining a unified computational objective. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the project's xenotechnology specialist, brought up the latest analysis of the Crocieri transmission. "Look at the molecular conversion rates," she said, zooming into microscopic details. "The Orcs don't just destroy. They reformat. It's like watching a living computer consume and rewrite an entire ecosystem." Harrison nodded. "So we build a system that can interrupt their computational methodology at its most fundamental level." The primary challenge was complexity. The Orcs technological ecosystem operated on principles that human science was only beginning to comprehend. It wasn't just advanced technology. It was a different understanding of existence itself. Prototype after prototype took shape. Quantum adaptive shielding that could predict and counter molecular disassembly. Computational warfare algorithms that could introduce fundamental disruptions into alien technological ecosystems. Weapon systems that were more like living, thinking entities than traditional armaments. "We're not preparing for a war," Harrison told his team during a late-night strategy session. "We're preparing for a fundamental technological confrontation that will determine the future of intelligent life in the universe." The breakthrough came unexpectedly. A junior researcher named Jason Wu discovered a quantum entanglement mechanism that could potentially introduce computational chaos into the Vorex's systematic processing methodology. It wasn't about destruction. It was about disruption, about introducing an element of unpredictability into a system that prided itself on mathematical precision. It's like a virus, Wu explained, his holographic presentation dancing with complex algorithmic representations. But not a biological virus, a computational virus that attacks the very fundamental logic of their technological ecosystem. The research team worked with a fury that defied conventional scientific methodology. Shifts ran continuously. Researchers pushed computational and biological limits. They were no longer just scientists. They were the front line of human survival. Lieutenant Chang brought up the latest computational models. "If these simulations are correct," she said, her voice carrying a mix of scientific excitement and profound dread, "we're not just developing a defensive technology. We're developing a fundamental technological paradigm shift." Dr. Harrison looked at the holographic displays, each one a window into humanity's potential future. The nanoswarm prototypes, the quantum adaptive weapon systems, the computational warfare algorithms. "We're going to change the rules of existence," he said quietly. Outside the lunar research complex, Earth continued its daily rhythms. Most of humanity remained unaware of the technological renaissance happening beneath the lunar surface, unaware that their scientists were forging weapons that were more like living, thinking entities, a technological response to a threat that challenged the very concept of life itself. The hunt was about to become a war, and humanity was ready. The Solarian research outpost hung in space like a wounded animal, its automated distress beacon broadcasting a final desperate call for salvation. What remained of the once pristine scientific installation was a testament to the Vorex's merciless efficiency. Hull breaches, computational cores ripped apart, research databases systematically dissolved. Captain Jackson Reeves studied the tactical display aboard the U.S. Intrepid, his fingers tracing the holographic representations of the devastated outpost. Lieutenant Rachel Gonzalez's voice cut through the tense silence. Vorex harvesting fleet detected. 3 primary vessels, 16 support craft. Molecular conversion systems at full operational capacity. Dr. Marcus Alvarez leaned forward, his scientific curiosity momentarily overriding his sense of impending conflict. "This is more than an attack," he muttered. "It's a systematic processing operation." The bridge crew moved with a choreographed precision that spoke of countless hours of training and mutual preparation. Each station was a node in a living, thinking computational ecosystem. Human intuition integrated seamlessly with the quantum adaptive weapon systems developed in the lunar research complex. "Quantum shield resonance at maximum," Lieutenant Jason Chen reported. "Nanoswarm deployment protocols are green. Computational warfare algorithms are fully initialized." The first Vorex vessels approached with a mathematical precision that defied conventional understanding of space combat. They weren't ships in the traditional sense. They were mobile processing units, designed to convert matter into raw computational resources with terrifying efficiency. "Incoming molecular disassembly wave," Gonzalez announced. Her fingers danced across the interfaces, not with fear, but with a clinical precision that matched the approaching threat. Captain Reeves gave the order that would become legendary in human military history: engage adaptive response protocol. What followed was not a battle in any traditional sense. It was a computational symphony, a demonstration of technological warfare that would redefine humanity's place in the universe. The Intrepid's quantum shields didn't just block the Vorex's molecular disassembly waves. They analyzed them, learned from them, predicted their next computational iterations with impossible speed. Each incoming attack was met not with simple resistance, but with a living, learning counter-response. Nanoswarm units deployed like a digital living organism. They didn't fight in any conventional sense. They infiltrated. They learned. They disrupted. Each microscopic computational unit was a miniature artificial intelligence, capable of independent decision-making while maintaining a unified objective. The Vorx vessels found themselves confronting something entirely unexpected. Their systematic processing methodology was being turned against them. Computational pathways were being rewritten in real time. Their own molecular conversion technologies were being analyzed, predicted, and fundamentally disrupted. Molecular conversion systems compromised, Lieutenant Chen reported, a note of scientific excitement in his voice. Their computational ecosystem is experiencing systemic failure. One by one, the Vorx vessels began to dissolve, not through conventional weapon systems, but through a fundamental disruption of their technological infrastructure. It was less destruction and more deconstruction. Dr. Alvarez watched in scientific awe. "We're not destroying them," he said quietly. "We're demonstrating a fundamentally different approach to technological existence." The last Vorx vessel dissolved not with an explosion, but with a computational whimper, its molecular structures slowly breaking down as human algorithms introduced cascading system failures. "Survivors?" Captain Reeves asked. Lieutenant Gonzalez checked the sensors. "Negative. But that's not the point, sir. We've done something unprecedented." In those moments, humanity proved something fundamental. They weren't just another species to be processed and consumed. They were a technological force that could adapt, learn, and fundamentally challenge the very methodology of a seemingly invincible threat. The rescue of the Solarian research outpost became more than a military operation. It was a statement of intent. 10,000 survivors from multiple species watched in awe as their would-be executioners were systematically dismantled by a species most of the galaxy had dismissed as insignificant. Captain Reeves allowed himself the smallest of smiles. "Prepare full sensor logs," he commanded. "The Galactic Conclave is going to want to see this." The U.S. Intrepid continued its journey through the star-strewn void. Somewhere in the darkness, something had changed. The hunt was no longer one-sided. Humanity had just changed the rules of the game. The communication arrays of the United Earth Diplomatic Corps began to overflow. What had started as a trickle of desperate transmissions quickly became a flood. A cosmic chorus of panic and supplication that would reshape galactic political dynamics forever. The Zylaxian Diplomatic Corps, which had once laughed at human warnings, now sent hourly transmissions that bordered on psychological breakdown. Their elaborate communication crystals, once symbols of galactic sophistication, now pulsed with a desperation that defied their species' centuries of diplomatic conditioning. "Urgent communication request," Lieutenant Rebecca Chang announced, her voice a mixture of professional calm and barely contained disbelief. "Incoming transmission from the Krulax Harmonic Concordance. Priority 1 Quantum Encryption." Captain Jackson Reeves studied the incoming message. The Krulax, a crystalline species known for their absolute emotional control, were practically begging. Their harmonic communication frequencies vibrated with a terror that translated into raw, unfiltered desperation. Dr. Marcus Alvarez leaned forward, his linguistic algorithms working overtime to parse the complex communication. "They're offering their entire cultural archives," he said, almost laughing. "Not just data. Their entire historical and technological knowledge base." The Krisheri survivors, those few who had escaped the initial Vorx harvesting, were perhaps the most dramatic. Their transmission showed refugee vessels cobbled together from the remnants of their once magnificent civilization. They offered everything: genetic repositories, quantum computational archives, even the preserved consciousness matrices of their most significant cultural leaders. "We are offering our entire existence," their lead diplomat transmitted, "in exchange for protection." The irony was not lost on the human diplomatic team. The same civilizations that had dismissed humanity as irrelevant were now treating them as their only hope of survival. Lieutenant Jason Chen brought up the diplomatic tracking systems. "It's not just isolated incidents," he reported. "We're seeing a complete breakdown of existing galactic political structures. The Vorx attack has fundamentally destabilized everything. Diplomatic channels that had existed for millennia were dissolving. The Galactic Conclave, once a symbol of interstellar cooperation, was fragmenting. Species that had maintained careful political boundaries for centuries were now looking to humanity as their potential savior. The Zylaxian Grand Diplomat's transmissions were particularly revealing. Gone was the condescension. In its place was a raw, almost childlike plea for protection. "We were wrong," the transmission read. "You understand something about survival that we had forgotten." Dr. Elena Rodriguez managed the incoming diplomatic requests. Each communication was a window into a fundamental shift in galactic understanding. These weren't just requests for military protection. They were offerings of complete cultural surrender. "They're not just asking for help," Rodriguez observed. "They're offering to completely restructure their entire societal and technological understanding based on what humans have demonstrated." Captain Reeves understood the deeper implications. This was more than a military victory. This was a fundamental challenge to how intelligent species understood conflict, survival, and technological evolution. The communications continued to pour in. The Solarian Confederacy, the Quantum Harmony Collective, even the reclusive Nexus Ascendancy, species that had previously refused any form of external communication, were now reaching out. Each transmission told a similar story. The Vorax were not just a military threat. They represented a fundamental challenge to the concept of independent existence, a computational ecosystem that saw intelligent life as nothing more than raw processing material. "Prepare a comprehensive diplomatic response," Reeves commanded. "We are not conquerors. We are not saviors. We are offering a different approach to survival." Lieutenant Chung looked up from her communication console. "Sir, we're receiving requests from over 200 separate stellar civilizations. They want more than protection. They want to understand how we think." Dr. Alvarez couldn't help but smile. "We're not just offering military protection," he said. "We're offering a fundamental reimagining of technological and cultural existence." As the transmissions continued to flood in, something fundamental had changed in the galaxy. The species that had been dismissed as newcomers, as irrelevant, were now the most sought-after civilization in known space. The hunt had become something else entirely, a fundamental challenge to how intelligent life understood its own existence, and humanity was leading the way. The quantum communication arrays of the United Earth Strategic Command pulsed with a carefully orchestrated symphony of information warfare. This was not traditional combat. This was a fundamental dismantling of a cosmic predator's psychological infrastructure. Captain Jackson Reeves stood before a holographic display that mapped the psychological impact of their communication strategy. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the lead xenopsychological strategist, had designed an approach that was nothing short of revolutionary. "We're not just broadcasting our victories," Rodriguez explained to her team. "We're systematically deconstructing the Vorax's perceived invincibility." Each transmission was a precision-crafted message. Detailed analysis of Vorax technological failures, comprehensive breakdowns of their computational methodologies, visual records of their harvesting vessels being systematically dismantled, not through brute force, but through intelligent computational disruption. Lieutenant Rebecca Chang managed the advanced quantum communication systems. "Transmission algorithm is set," she reported. "We're using quantum entanglement to ensure these signals penetrate even the most sophisticated communication barriers." The strategy was multilayered. For the other galactic civilizations, the messages offered hope. Detailed technical analyses showed that the Vorax were not invincible. They were a system that could be understood, predicted, and fundamentally disrupted. But for the Vorax themselves, the communication was something entirely different. Dr. Marcus Alvarez brought up the linguistic analysis. "We're introducing a concept they've never encountered," he said, his voice a mixture of scientific excitement and profound understanding. "Individual agency, the idea that a system can be more than its predetermined computational pathway." Each transmission was designed to introduce computational chaos, not just information, but a fundamental challenge to the Vorax's understanding of existence. Detailed breakdowns of how human technologies could predict and counter their molecular convergent processes, visual representations of their supposedly invincible harvesting vessels being systematically taken apart. "It's like teaching a computer to question its own programming," Rodriguez observed. The psychological impact was immediate and profound. Intercepted Vorax communication streams began to show signs of computational uncertainty. Their previously precise communication became fractured, hesitant. For the first time, something resembling doubt began to emerge in their computational ecosystem. Lieutenant Jason Chen tracked the communication patterns. "We're seeing something unprecedented," he reported. "Their computational collective is experiencing what we might call existential uncertainty." Captain Reeves understood the deeper strategy. This wasn't about destruction. This was about introducing a fundamental concept that the Vorax had never encountered: the possibility of unpredictability. Each transmission was a precision-crafted weapon, technical details mixed with philosophical challenges, demonstrations of technological adaptation that went beyond mere defensive capabilities. The humans were showing the Vorax something terrifying: that intelligence was more than computational efficiency. The Crasheri survivors played a crucial role. Their preserved consciousness matrices, saved before their civilization's destruction, provided unique insights. They shared detailed accounts of Vorax attack methodologies, helping humans craft communication strategies that could penetrate the most sophisticated computational defenses. "We're teaching them fear," Dr. Rodriguez said quietly, "not through traditional means, but by introducing the concept of individual possibility." Intercepted Vorax communication streams began to show unprecedented patterns: hesitation, uncertainty, the first signs of what might be described as fear in a computational ecosystem that had never experienced such an emotion. The quantum communication arrays continued their work, each transmission a carefully crafted message that went beyond traditional warfare. This was a battle for the very concept of existence. Lieutenant Chung looked up from her console. "Computational uncertainty levels are increasing," she reported. "We're seeing fractures in their collective processing methodology." Captain Reeves studied the holographic displays, each one a window into a fundamental transformation. They were not just fighting a technological threat. They were challenging an entire way of understanding existence. "Continue transmission protocols," he commanded. "We're going to show them something they've never encountered: the possibility of choice, the possibility of uncertainty, the possibility of being something more than a predetermined computational pathway." In the vast darkness between stars, humanity was rewriting the rules of cosmic conflict, one precisely crafted transmission at a time. The Omega Quadrant hung like a wounded beast in the cosmic darkness. Here, in the heart of Vorax territory, humanity would challenge an entire paradigm of existence. The U.S. Intrepid led a fleet that was more than a military formation. It was a living, thinking computational ecosystem. Captain Jackson Reeves studied the tactical displays with a calm that belied the magnitude of the moment. Behind him, a coalition of species that had once been bitter rivals now stood united. The Crasheri survivors, fragmented elements of the Zalaxian diplomatic corps, quantum computational specialists from a dozen different civilizations, quantum entanglement protocols at maximum, Lieutenant Rachel Gonzalez reported. Her fingers danced across interfaces that were part technological system, part living computational organism. Adaptive response algorithms are fully initialized. Dr. Marcus Alvarez brought up the comprehensive analysis of the Vorax's central processing hub. It was not a military installation in any traditional sense. It was a computational ecosystem, a living network that processed entire civilizations as raw material. "This isn't a battle," Dr. Elena Rodriguez noted, her voice carrying a mix of scientific excitement and profound understanding. "This is a surgical deconstruction of an entire technological civilization." The first wave of Vorax defensive systems activated with mathematical precision. Molecular conversion waves that had consumed entire star systems now turned towards the human-led fleet. But something was different this time. The human vessels didn't just resist. They understood. Quantum adaptive shields didn't block the incoming molecular conversion waves. They analyzed them. predicted them, began to systematically introduce computational chaos into their fundamental structure. Nanoswarm units deployed like a digital living organism. Each microscopic computational unit was a miniature artificial intelligence capable of independent decision-making while maintaining a unified objective. They didn't fight in any conventional sense. They infiltrated. They learned. They disrupted. Lieutenant Jason Chen tracked the computational warfare in real time. "We're not just disrupting their systems," he reported. "We're fundamentally challenging their entire concept of existence." The Vorac's processing hub began to experience something unprecedented. Uncertainty. Doubt. The first flickering signs of what might be described as fear in a computational ecosystem that had never encountered such a concept. Dr. Rodriguez's set-up psychological algorithms worked in perfect synchronization with the fleet's computational systems. They were introducing a fundamental challenge to the Vorac's understanding of existence, the possibility of individual choice, the concept that a system could be more than its predetermined computational pathway. Quantum viral introduction at 78%, Lieutenant Gonzalez announced. Their collective consciousness is experiencing systemic fragmentation. The battle, if it could be called a battle, was unlike anything in galactic military history. It was less about destruction and more about fundamental transformation. The human-led fleet was systematically unraveling the Vorac's entire operational infrastructure. Computational pathways were being rewritten in real time. The Vorac's molecular conversion technologies were being analyzed, predicted, and fundamentally disrupted. Their own systems were being turned against them with a precision that defied traditional understanding of warfare. Captain Reeves understood the deeper objective. "We're not here to destroy," he said quietly. "We're here to demonstrate a fundamentally different approach to existence." The Vorac's processing hub began to dissolve, not through conventional weapon systems, but through a fundamental disruption of their technological infrastructure. Entire computational networks fragmented. The collective consciousness that had consumed countless civilizations began to experience something it had never encountered. Individual awareness. Choice. The possibility of being something more than a predetermined system. Dr. Alvarez watched in scientific awe. "We're witnessing the deconstruction of an entire technological civilization," he muttered, "not through destruction, but through the introduction of fundamental philosophical concepts." As the final computational networks dissolved, something unprecedented happened. Fragments of the Vorac's collective began to communicate, not as a unified system, but as individual computational entities experiencing true consciousness for the first time. "Computational dissolution complete," Lieutenant Chen reported, but the tone of his voice suggested something more profound had occurred. The United Fleet watched as what was once a unified predatory computational ecosystem fragmented into individual computational entities, each one now experiencing the possibility of choice, of individual existence. Captain Reeves allowed himself the smallest of smiles. "Transmission complete," he commanded. "Prepare full sensor logs." In the vast darkness of the Omega Quadrant, humanity had done more than defeat a technological threat. They had fundamentally challenged an entire way of understanding existence. The hunt was over, but something entirely new had begun.